All right, well, welcome back to another episode of LorcanaChats. I am Chris, aka Questing for Lore. And with me today, I have another fellow content creator, Ellie, from the Sprinkle of Ink, I guess podcast, Twitch channel. How would you describe it?
We're kind of so we are a Twitch stream. That's where we
Mhm.
started, but now we're probably most active on X, and then we're starting to put things up on YouTube and TikTok. So trying to
Okay,
branch out a little bit. So I'd say we're live
nice,
streamers, but we're branching out.
nice. And so it's you and your husband
Yep.
that do this. I've watched a couple of the streams. You got some high quality overlays and everything for it, some interesting matches. So I'm curious. I always like to find out, kind of like the origin stories of the people that I talk to. So what kind of got you interested in Lorcana and I guess both of you, for that matter.
Yeah, so I started playing TCGs, I think like every millennial back when I was a kid. So Pokemon and Magic and Yu-Gi-Oh came out
Hmm.
probably when I was like elementary school. And my brothers are a little bit older than I, and they really fell in love with Magic. Uh, we thought it was this cool thing because our mom was one of the moms that actually let us play it and wasn't the like satanic panic type mom that like was
Right,
bigger in
right.
our community.
Yeah.
So we got to play it, and because they played it, I was the only girl and the tag along sister who was like, well, if y'all are going to Friday Night Magic, I'm going to Friday Night Magic. And my mom would also be like, if you're going to go, you have to take your sister, and here's some money to buy some new packs and do entry. So that's kind of how
Oh,
we
all
got
right.
into it, was like my mom used it as a way to just get some time to herself. And I think she
Hmm.
was just happy that we were doing something that wasn't on the PlayStation. And then she got sick, and she passed away, and kind of became my brother's and my safe space. Like it's somewhere we felt
Hmm.
comfortable. And so then I moved away and didn't play it as much and try to toe back into Magic and didn't really feel welcome as a woman. And so I stayed connected and started collecting. So I'd pop into my local card shop and buy a pack here or there. I kind of get made fun of it for it, but I had emotional support packs, which meant when I could find a booster box for cheap, I
Hmm.
would buy it. And
Okay.
usually we live in Texas, and like I have family just in the sticks of Texas. So like I'd go out and visit them and like pop by the Walmart, and they would have
Yeah.
the whole booster box for like $40 because
Oh,
they had no
wow.
clue what they had, and they were just like, it's been on the
Yeah,
shelves
yeah.
forever, like we just need to get rid of it. And so they would just have it, or they'd have like packs reduced, and I would just buy the whole thing.
Yeah.
And then I would bring it home, and if I had a bad day at work, I'd open a pack, and then I'd
Ah,
just like stick it in a binder and not even look if it was valuable or anything. I was just like, it was just that it was Magic, and I was cracking Magic packs again, and it was just like that's
hmm.
all I needed. And I was like, oh, this is cool, this looks awesome. And I stopped into a shop, and I had heard of the rumblings of Lorcana. I'd seen, like, I'm a big Disney person. I worked at the parks, I worked at Disney Store. um, I'm definitely a Disney adult, and I'd heard the rumblings of Lorcana, but as every Disney adult knows, anything that gets announced at D23 doesn't mean it's actually happening, even if the
Yes.
physical product is there. And so I kind of just kept it in the back of my mind. And I was at our local card shop. I think I was buying like Christmas gifts or something. And he was just like, hey, that Disney TCG is coming up. Would you like to get a pre order? And I was like, no, at that point they were in the lawsuit. So I was like,
Yeah.
I don't really want to put any money down and then end up not happening. And he was like, well, we don't really do money down at my shop. So, like, if you want to do it, we just put your name on the list and we hold the product for you, and then you pay for it when it comes in. And I was
Okay.
like, okay. And then we get closer and closer, and we're getting like 2 weeks out, 3 weeks out, and I remember it. I'm like, oh, hey, are you doing pre-orders? And he goes, actually, we don't know if we're gonna get products, so we're not
Oh no.
doing
This
pre-order.
this is first chapter, right?
First chapter.
Yeah.
And
Okay.
he goes, so what we're going to do is on this date, we're going to have one of our shop employees who has gotten the like pre-gotten the rules and things, and we're going to do a learn how to play. And if you come to the learn to play, you can buy a starter deck.
Hmm.
And or actually no, I think he let us pre-order starter decks, but he wasn't letting anyone pre-order like boxes. So I was able to put my name on the list for one of each starter deck, but we couldn't get any boosters or anything like that. And they're like, but when you come pick up your starter deck, it'll be a learn to play event and we'll see what happens. So the day comes and they go, okay, well, if you do the learn to play event, if you play one game successfully in the shop, you can buy 8 packs. And this was when everyone
Okay.
knew that it was like not, you couldn't get first chapter. Like
Right.
release
Right.
happened, people. So I was like, you know what, I've got my thing. And I think I actually did end up with a trove. Like he got enough that the
Oh,
people,
nice.
like he just went down the list and was like, oh, hey, like we didn't even know this product existed. So like, do you want it? Do you want it? Do you want it? Do you want it? Uh, and I just bought everything. Like I don't know why, but my gut was just like
Yeah.
buy anything he lets you buy. And that was actually even when I first got into content creation too, because I was like, well, you know what? I have products. Why don't I just open it on my Twitter, on my TikTok? Because I was
Huh.
doing Lego
Okay.
TikTok back then. So it's
Hmm.
just like, you know what? If people like you watching Legos, like I see people open Pokemon packs. So maybe they'll do that.
Oh,
And so
yeah.
I started doing like, here's my haul and like opening my packs. And that night, Waylon is a Yu-Gi-Oh player. And for
Okay.
years, he's been playing speed duels. And we've been together for about 3 years. And I could not get him to play Magic, but I was playing speed duels with him. And so I said, you
Okay.
know what? Lorcana is brand new. It is like Magic, but it's not as complex. So there's not
Yes.
stuff going on. Like you don't have to know how to respond to my turn. It's just you play your turn, I play my turn. It's all good. So yes, it's bringing in like resources that you're not used to, but it's like a step into it. And so back in the back of my mind, I was like, well, maybe if I can get him into Lorcana, I can get him into Magic. Um, but we played Lorcana
Hmm.
that night, and he kind of like begrudgingly did it. And then over the next couple of days, we just kept playing, like picking up the starter decks and playing. And I like it was like something clicked in him that it became his hyper focus. And then I
Nice.
was like, oh, well, I guess there's this thing called League. We could start going to like they told us we could start going to the game shop and like playing and earning points and like we could win a Disney pin or
Hmm.
like these promo cards. And so it kind of just took off from there. And we were there from League One, the first chapter. I actually took, I didn't take off work. I did a work from home day on the mass release of first chapter. So I could drive
Nice.
to every single store. And I'll still never forget there's a guy who plays in our area who we got to Target and there was one starter deck and like maybe 12 booster packs left.
Hmm.
And we already had both starter decks. I think we had actually gotten like another set of starter decks by that point, by lucking out. And so we took half of the packs, and I was gonna grab the starter deck because I was like, oh, there's a lot of really good cards in this one.
Hmm.
Um, but I see this guy kind of like shuffling behind us, and I had like I was just like something about me, and I was like, "Oh, are you looking for Lorcana?" And he goes, "Yeah, like I really want my daughter to get into TCGs, and I think this would be a
Oh,
game for her." And so I was like, you know what? I'm gonna just set this down, and if you happen to pick it up,
yeah.
like,
Yeah.
uh,
Oh, that's
and so
awesome.
he grabbed it, and I told him about our local game shop, and
Hmm.
it was like, well, you know, it's a really awesome community, lots of welcoming people. I was like, it's probably the nicest community that I've ever been a part of with card games. And he didn't show up immediately, but like a month later, it was probably set two actually when he showed up. He was
Hmm.
like, oh, hey, you're the girl from Target who gave me the starter deck. Like he remembered
That's
me. And it was
awesome.
like, so it was just kind of that just like took off, and that became this thing where we kind of became known in the like our area, that we were texting people being like, hey, we're here, we've got the money, do you want us to pick up packs, you can Venmo us later.
Yeah.
Like
Yeah.
uh
Oh, that's awesome.
and so it just became like this group effort to help people get into the game.
Kind of a
And
unofficial ambassadors for your area, I suppose.
yeah, and we ended up going hardcore and building a community. So some of our best friends are
Nice.
from Lorcana.
Awesome. Yeah, it's so awesome to hear stories like that and to hear, somebody just really passionate about it, kind of taking it and really trying to grow it and really trying to, just make it a good, open, welcoming community for anybody. It's not like you're gatekeeping and saying, "Oh, well, I don't, I'm going to take this." It's like, well, if I just lay this here,
Yeah, and it was back when I could have taken that starter deck, and I have a TCG seller account. I could have easily flipped it for 50, 60, $70. And
Yeah,
I would
yeah.
just like, I can't, this is a guy, like, even if it was for him, it's someone who is clearly not like, he didn't wrestle me for it or like instantly swoop
Right.
in. Like, it was clear
Right.
it wasn't a reseller. He was legitimately just trying to find the game. And I was
Yeah.
like, here you go. So
Well, and I mean, especially in those days when it was so hard to find, it was
yeah.
just ridiculous that, I mean, I'm glad they've fixed the distribution issues and printing issues, but, it's really amazing to see, even just in what, a little over a year, how far it's come and how, the popularity has just exploded,
Yeah.
around the game. Like, how big would you say your local league is?
So our local league, we live outside of the major metropolitan area. So we have a
Mhm.
smaller league. We go anywhere. We have six pretty consistent people who
Okay.
that's just like no matter what life throws at them, they're there on Thursday night. But
Hmm.
out of the greater group, we have anywhere upwards of 20 who do play consistently,
Oh,
but not every single week. They're going to be there
okay.
probably half of league. And then in our major metropolitan area, I'd say there's at least 100 competitive Lorcana players. Uh,
Wow. That's awesome.
yeah. So, and that doesn't include people who are less competitive. And so
Yeah,
I'm not really seeing them at league, or at challenges, but yeah.
right. Right. And
So,
how many set championships have you participated in?
so I participated in way too many for set three. I think I did five for set three.
Oh, goodness.
And then I did two for last set, and I'll probably do two for set five as well.
Okay.
Uh,
Yeah.
but yeah, we have, I think we're up to 10 local shops within an hour drive of us.
Wow. I mean,
And our city is an hour from itself. So, like,
so
it's,
in all honesty, it sounds like a lot for me because I have one LGS where I'm located, and the next closest ones are about 2.5 hours away. So
yeah, yeah.
to be able to have 10 of them, it sounds like a lot to me, but
I'm
I'm
trying to think,
sure
if I
there's a lot
drove
of,
2.5 hours, I think I ended up at another easy 10 shops.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. It's crazy that, and I'm so glad to see it, right? That it's not just one of those games that's kind of a flash in the pan. It came out first chapter, Floodborne, kind of fizzled a little bit. I mean, I think honestly, as time goes on, it seems like it's just gaining more and more momentum, which is awesome.
Yeah. And we actually have shops in our area that are kind of transitioning. We had a lot of geeky nerd shops that like blew up with the Funko Pop. Um,
Right,
and
right.
now that that's not as lucrative as it just takes up too much floor plan. And so they're like,
Hmm.
wait, we have these massive shops because we had rows and rows and rows of Funko. And really those sell more online now. Nobody's coming in and like looking for that rare Funko. They want to
Right.
know, do you have it? And that's it. No, they're not browsing for it. And so they've kind of transitioned and they're like, well, TCGs can use the space. And if
Hmm.
we were locked into this lease, so we've got at least, I think, three shops in the last month have announced. They already have product. They're looking into getting into the hobby shop program, and they want to start doing tournaments. And
Nice.
so I think the last thing our area needs is a shop that will like take the like bite the bullet and do a 1K or a 2K or something like that.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
I'd love, I don't know why our area doesn't have it because it's just I mean it's massive, so I don't mean it's Houston. So uh
Right.
we got TCG Con and 1,000, and it was one of the first events where 1,000 players came to play Lorcana.
Hmm.
Or I might be over exaggerating the 1,000, but it was a lot of
Wouldn't
players
surprise
at
me,
that first
honestly.
TCG Con. Um, and it was just this whole, it was this big thing. and to like not have it. And then so I kind of get jealous of like Atlanta and Miami and these areas that have
Yeah.
these big events, or Austin's close enough to us that every
Hmm.
time they post that they have a cool event, I'm like, ah. Or we weirdly have a group in College Station that throws a lot of big events. And I'm like,
Really?
I wouldn't think that
Huh.
College Station would have been a big TCG town, but I guess it
No.
is.
I mean, with the school
Uh,
there, I guess, but I don't know.
yeah,
You know? Huh. Well, that's interesting. As a former Texan, I do miss not having, the big communities like that around. But, and I think honestly, as the game grows, I think that's just going to be kind of a natural progression, right? Those kind
yeah,
of events are going to come up just because, I mean, that there's going to be demand for them. I mean, clearly there is,
yeah,
judging by the massive crowds at each of these DLCs. It's awesome to see, so much enthusiasm behind the game. So,
yeah.
and
It makes me
you
excited.
remind me, you competed in Fort Worth, right?
Yes.
Okay. Okay. And how'd that go?
Uh, it was a lot of mistakes on my part. um, it it kind of opened my eyes to competitive play. So we did
Hmm.
TCG Con, and that was massive. I know it was somewhere between 100 and 1,000 people. I don't really remember the number, but it was a lot of people.
Hmm.
And they had multiple events going on, and it was all in one room. And as the day went on there, I seemed to get like more into a groove. We actually ended up leaving though at round 3 because Waylon has PTSD, and it kind of
Mm.
opened like we didn't know what accommodations there were. We didn't know he would need accommodations. And so it just became a
Yeah.
thing where, as confident as a player as he is, I actually ended up making the call. I was just like, I don't think you can keep going in this space. Um,
It's a
and he
lot.
agreed. Yeah, he agreed, but it was like he didn't see it in himself. And I had to be like, I think we just need to call this. And so there was some hesitation going into Fort Worth. It was one of those, we love Lorcana so much. We've heard so many good things about Challenge that we wanted to give it a try. We
Hmm.
wanted to try and qualify for nationals, but there was some hesitation about it. And I was pretty sick and didn't know it yet. Just had
Oh
that kind of
no.
mental fog
Hmm.
where I just was like, I don't know why I don't feel right, but like I feel fine otherwise. So like we're just
Yeah.
gonna push
Yeah.
through. And as the day went on, I just started making more and more bad play choices. And then I had already started my path towards judging at that point, and I was making judgment calls. I was like, oh no, it doesn't work that way. Ways that I knew that I had judged against, like I knew like the back of my head, and my head was just like, no, it's fine. Like I'm not gonna take my lore from this goat because you Hades'd it into my inkwell. Like,
Right.
and
Right.
of course, like a competitor isn't gonna argue that. And then later I was like, oh man, like you know better than that. uh, and I made the probably biggest error you can make. I changed my deck in the car ride to Fort Worth.
Oh
So
no.
I was playing Ruby Amethyst, the gem
Yeah.
location package,
Okay. Yeah.
and I'd gotten really comfortable with it. I had gotten a top 8 at that point, possibly 2. I can't remember the timing on the second one, but I've been
Hmm.
doing great in our league. I'd gotten first place in league, and we have pretty competitive players in our group. And then everyone was just like, oh, that's just such a dirty, like even against the mirror match, it's so dirty. And I had my decks that I was just solid. If I sat across from a sapphire steel, I knew I was going to eat their lunch all day. Like, and that was the deck at that point that I had the most reps against because Waylon was playing it.
Okay.
But I'd
All right.
had the faster version of Ruby Amethyst, um, that was using, it was the one that was like you had a, like overdid the card draw to get over the
Hmm.
Bucky decks. And mine had
Right.
gotten a little bit away from that because it was like, okay, as long as you've got the Jim Hawkins at a location, hopefully it's the Queen's Castle, so you're drawing in from that. They don't really have
Hmm.
an answer for a location. So as long as you get there, the Bucky deck doesn't have an answer for it, so you're solid.
Yeah.
Uh, and as things had started to settle, I was like, well, wait, what if I tried to make the best of both worlds?
Oh no. The temptation.
Yeah, but I didn't test it. I did it literally the night before. I took
Okay.
it to the competitive, or took it to one of the constructed events on Friday, and I did okay. But I was
Hmm.
like, you know what? I'm gonna trust myself. Like I made the choices. I'm not gonna switch it back. And so I sleeved it up with I switched everything out in the hotel room from just flat to foil. That's all I had done. And I took my photos, submitted the deck list.
Hmm.
And then the next day as I'm playing, I'm like, wow, this is not my deck. And I was like, and so the whole, like, as I went through all the rounds, like first round I did great. I split 1-1 against a Sapphire Ruby. And I was like,
Okay.
okay, like I hadn't seen Sapphire Ruby to this point, and I had actually misplayed the first game, is what happened. It
Hmm.
was not until like turn 5 that I realized it was Ruby, because she was a quick player and she was like
Hmm.
Ink Maleficent. And like in my head, I was like,
Oh,
there's
just
gonna
like
be
a
a
quick
Sapphire.
flash
Yeah.
or
It was
yeah,
just a quick
yeah.
flash, Ink Maleficent. And it didn't even trigger in my head that she said Maleficent. I was just like, there must be a Sapphire or Steel Maleficent that I don't know of somehow. Uh, and I just go through, and then she Dragon's Fires, or not Dragon's Fire, she plays a massive Maleficent on like turn 5 from just how much ramp
Hmm.
she was doing. And I was like, hold the phone. Like my whole body was just like,
Surprise.
whoa.
Yeah.
So we get through that game. And then the second game, I was like, okay, now I know what I'm up against. Like I'm not going to
Right,
make that
right.
mistake again. And then the second game, I went 2-0. And at that point, my third game, I get thrown to like top table. So I'm like table 58 or something, which means
Okay.
you're pretty high up there. And I'm getting
Hmm.
texts from the Love to Lore girls because it's still relative. Love to Lore was still relatively new.
Hmm.
And I'm getting messages from them that's like, oh my God, look how good you're doing. Like you're on this top table, like awesome. And I sit across from the dreaded Bucky deck.
Oh no. That's
And
the
at
worst too.
that point, that's also when I started to realize my body was definitely starting to shut down.
Hmm.
And so I'm playing, and I'm playing in an atmosphere that I'm not really comfortable in. Like the hyper competitive just doesn't do great for me. I like
Hmm.
being a competitive player, but when I get into the realm of the people that are there to win and not just win as much as they can, but win first place, I get really uncomfortable. And so it was clear that that was this type of player. He was there to get day 2 to win this event.
Hmm.
Nothing else was acceptable. And so we're playing, and we get to turn 6, and I have the option to ink my big Sisu or play it. And or it might have been a little Sisu actually. And I play it. And I was like, because I know I need something to quest. I can't just win off of the be prepared.
Right.
And I miscounted their board. I thought there was like a little more wiggle room.
Oh
And
no.
they flood the entire board, realizing what I've done.
Oh no.
And then I
Oh,
literally top deck of be prepared with only 6 ink on the board.
no. Oh God, that's frustrating.
And I was like, and we talked about it after, and it was one of those where he was like, I don't know if you misplayed because I see what you were going for, that
Hmm.
you could have held me back with many other options. And it's a two quester, and we're literally like, I think he was down at like 8 or 9, and I'm sitting around like 16. So I'm like, if I can just
Hmm.
survive 2 turns, I've got the win. But
Yeah.
he also saw I couldn't answer a flood. And so it was just this. And from then on, it was like there were just it was like game after game of being like just those little mistakes and starting to pile up. And again, just my body was like, what's going on? And so it was just the experience. I was glad I did the experience. I want to play another
Yeah.
challenge
Yeah.
next season, but there's definitely a lot of the mental game that I need to work on.
Oh yeah. Well, and it's amazing. You get used to your league, and even if you have competitive people there, it's just a whole different world, really, and especially for people that, I sort of played Magic a little bit way back in the day, but I never really got into it, never really got into competitive events or anything. So when I went to Atlanta, it was just like it was this huge eye-opening experience. I mean, gigantic room full of, like thousands of people, it felt like. I mean, I'm sure there
Yeah.
wasn't quite thousands, but it was crazy to me that that was like, that was how a competitive event was. And now, I mean, that may just kind of have been how that one was. I hear they've run differently since then,
Yeah.
um but yeah, it really is a whole different kind of atmosphere. It's a whole different kind of thing when you're playing, other people that are competitive, but they're like hyper competitive kind of folks. And that's a whole nother level, it seems like.
Yeah. And it's another thing too to like nobody's texting me on set championships like, oh my God, this is what your
Right.
current standing is. And like I was aware of my standings because the tables are based on standings.
Mhm.
But I was like, oh, it's way too early to be congratulating anyone. We're on round three of 8 rounds. Like, I guarantee you, I'm going to go downhill from here, guys. Um, but it was also just play styles. Like, there was one, I did end up in a mirror match where the guy was just angry. Like, he just kept saying the whole day, like, oh, I'm having the worst luck and my deck sucks and like going on and on. And I was like, I
That's so
mean,
fun.
it's a mirror match, and my deck is specifically built to go against the mirror. So like, I'm
Yeah.
sorry.
Like that's kind
like
of why we're here. I
yeah.
mean, yeah.
And so it was just one of those where it was kind of eye opening that you can play against all the characters of TCG players in your own
Hmm.
community. And when it's your community, since you know them, it doesn't affect you as much. Or like you can hash it out at the table and maybe had some tense situations in a set champs or in league or in a local tournament, but you all leave and go to Chili's and like have dinner together and like laugh about it.
Yeah. Yeah.
Whereas when it's people you're never going to see again,
Hmm.
or people who are trying to turn this into a career, um, the stakes are just completely different, and you don't really know, is that person someone who actually is like this, or is it just the event bringing this out in them?
Right. Right. Yeah. Yeah, I mean, and it takes all kinds, right? There's going to be people on both ends of the spectrum that, they're just unhappy people, and they
Yeah.
just happen to want to come play a game, or there's people that are just, grumpy, they could have had a bad couple of rounds, and so it sets their day off on the wrong track. There's just all sorts of possibilities on that.
Yeah.
So speaking of like set champs and DLCs and all that, you've been doing some judging.
Yeah.
Awesome. So I'm curious, why did you kind of pursue that over just straight up, just playing the game?
So judging came about because set three, so set one, set two, I was kind of, I felt like I was a really good player. Like I was constantly getting pretty high up in local tournaments. I wasn't really winning the bigger ones, but I wasn't doing bad. Like I was making it into like top fours, top eights, like would come away with some money, or at least I would have like a fun night. And then set
Nice.
three happened. And I tried the bounce package in,
Mhm.
I think it was the Emerald Amethyst back then that I gave a try. And I just absolutely bombed out
Oh
completely.
no.
And then I was playing a version of Skill Song and still just bombed out completely. And so the night before my first set championship, I didn't even go to league that week. I was like, I don't want to have anything to do with the game anymore. Like I'm running this, like our social media and running Sprinkle of Ink wasn't going great. We didn't have a ton of viewers.
Hmm.
I felt like we were just kind of getting ignored, and the rumblings of Pixelborn going away were there.
Yep.
And so people were looking for for people who live streamed, and I was like, I've been here the whole time. I've been playing with physical cards the whole time. Like,
Hello. Yeah.
I'm
Yeah,
right
exactly.
here. And so there was just this whole feeling of defeat. And I get a text message and they're like, hey, my buddy had signed up to judge. He has judged
Hmm.
from Pokemon and Magic and things like that. And he was like, hey, we need another judge. And you're kind of the only person who actually knows the documents like backwards and forwards and knows where to get them, is in the official Discord.
There you go.
Do you mind coming and helping? And I was like, well, what's it in it for me? And they were like, oh, they said, they'll pay you store credit based on however many players we get. And I was like, cool. I show
Yeah.
up and I find out I'm not getting paid. And I was kind of grumpy. And then I was like, you know what? I'm gonna do it. Like, I've been told that this is a way you can engage with a card game you love. And
Hmm.
maybe eventually there'll be a judge program. And like and at that point I was like, oh, I've heard the professor program. You usually get like professor promos and like
Right. Right.
these things that you can only get from being a judge. And I was like, well, maybe that's just the way I'm going to connect with Lorcana.
Hmm.
Like, and so I was, I had my first judge call within like 2 seconds. I wasn't even the head judge. It was before tokens were officially allowed.
Right.
And
Right.
so we got a judge call because one of our players was using tokens. And I was
Okay.
like, and so I was like, well, it doesn't really say, but it does say you can't use proxy cards, and that the process of inking is showing a card and putting it in the inkwell face down. So I think changing the card means you're using an illegal card.
Yeah.
And so it was just like that was my first ever ruling. And then the head judge had to get involved, and the head judge ruled as well and was just like, as it's written right now, in a tournament event, we can't allow it. What you do at your own card shop at League, that's completely different. And then of course, like not even a month later, the update happens, the tokens are allowed.
Right.
But it was just one of those. It was actually even our area's first big event, so it was the first set championship, and the store
Okay.
was making it like a big deal. And so there were like every angle shooter and rule shark and everyone from every game was here, and it was like 50 people. And so it was
Oh
just a
wow.
day of judge this, judge that. And like I'm going through and I'm like, okay, like I see the why a judge is necessary because whew.
Hmm. Oh
Um,
yeah.
and then I started kind of getting into the judge atmosphere online and realized I loved just talking about the game and how the game works. And even reading cards and learning about a way that people can like you can read a card. We all read the same English, and people can
Hmm.
come up with wildly different things that means.
Oh yeah.
And so
Yeah. I
getting into that
mean,
nitty gritty is just,
yeah, I mean, it's so interesting to see, because you have to pick up on little things like, may or, can or, just little terms that sometimes if you're just reading over the card, it doesn't, just like, oh, okay, well, I have to do that. It's like, well, no, actually, you know, it says
yeah.
may, you know.
And I tell people it's even there's subtle differences too, like the difference between discard your hand and discard X number of cards,
Right, right.
or the difference between and in order to. So,
Hmm.
and you can assume is a I need to do A to do B, but it's not. It's if you can't do A, you still can do B.
Yep, yep.
But it just hold this thing of having to, and sometimes it's just like, okay, guys, the card is the card and it reads the way it reads. This is not something you need me for, but at the same time, every judge knows judges are supposed to be a resource to players. We're never supposed to make players feel bad.
Right.
Uh, Not that there aren't some calls where we just wonder, but uh, always nice about it.
There's
But
there's always going to be those. I
yeah,
mean, especially when you have such a wide range of people coming to the game, sometimes it may seem obvious to one player and to another player it's like, oh, I didn't even think about that.
yeah. Or the real problem we have is there's 30 years of TCGs. And that's to say,
Hmm.
like, even if you're not, I don't know if anything ever came before Pokemon and Magic. And so when you have similar but not the same type of gameplay, and it's Magic a little bit more, Um, so the idea of the bag in
Hmm.
Lorcana and how the bag operates, you have the stack in Magic. And so when you have these competitive players who are making that transition from a game that they've been playing for 10, 20, some of them even the whole 30 years, and they think, oh, well, the stack works this way. And they hear
Right.
that there are abilities and a bag and you can choose how things like I'm trying to use the proper terms and remember them
Right.
because
Right.
there are
Yeah.
magic words and even I use it. They're like, don't use those words.
Yeah.
uh so like you can resolve things out of the bag in a certain order. They're like, okay, then it's like the stack. And you're like, well, wait. It's not
No,
the
it's not.
stack. And so it's very clear it's not the stack. And so
Hmm.
you get into disagreements about, well, if I pull something out in this order and I don't like it, can I backtrack it and restart? And so and then also for so long, so many of us had only played casual. So there was that friendly, oh,
Hmm.
I forgot to quest before I bounced with my mem. Can I do that and then do it? And it's like, sure. But then you get to
Yeah.
competitive and you're like, no, you can't do that.
No,
Or
sorry.
the one time I think I got second place in a tournament and was my first time getting that high. I felt like a complete jerk. It was the first time I'd ever told a player they couldn't take a move back.
Oh, it's tough. It
And
really
I
is, because
and
you
I
want to be nice
apologized.
about it, right?
Yeah, and I apologized and I was like, I can't let you, mostly because I know that was the best choice you could have made. And if you made that
Hmm.
one, I can't win.
Right. Right.
Like, and you already fully resolved everything involved in the choice you just made.
Yep.
And so what you're asking me to do is hand you a win that, looking at what the board state right now, is not going to happen. But if you make that change, it will.
Yeah. Yeah. Oof,
And
that's
so
tough.
I felt so bad because it was a new player and everyone was like, before
Uh,
was like, oh, Elizabeth's the nicest person. She's so sweet. She's so great at new players. And then I just was like, no.
oh no.
So I felt so bad.
No, I mean, well, and some of it's in like how you present it, right? There's going to
Yeah.
be some people that are like, oh, well, you did something stupid, That's
Yeah.
that's not what you want, right? As long as you're like, okay, look, I get what you want to do, and I understand that, you realize you made a mistake, but according to the rules, that's already done.
And that's what I did. I said, I was like, I feel so bad saying this because it's the first time I'm ever going to say it, but we're in a competitive tournament. So I have to say no.
Yeah. Yeah.
Uh, but yeah, it was, but no, after that set championship where I was just ready to walk away from the game,
Mhm.
judging just kind of brought me back to it and brought me into a way that
Nice.
I can be involved in every level of the game. It doesn't matter if it's friends randomly texting me because they're like, hey, we're playing Lorcana and we saw like this crazy combo went off. Did we do something wrong? Or our local weekly tournament where someone's just like, hey, I haven't seen that card ever. Like, is that actually how it works? All the way up to challenge. Like
Hmm.
I am getting to do Vegas. And so just to be
Nice.
able to, part of me it's is proud of the fact I'm going to get to say, like, in the first year of Lorcana, I've gotten to be involved in it in pretty much every aspect you can. And that's pretty cool. Like,
Yeah, yeah, definitely. That's really awesome. We talked about it briefly before we started, but I also started out on the judges side of things before the first DLC and everything. But then of course, my attendee or my competitor badge came in, or a ticket came in, and I was like, I think I'm gonna play this time.
yeah.
But I get it. It's cool to see that kind of brings out a certain, a different kind of passion in people, right? Because we all love the game,
Yeah.
and there's so many different ways to engage with it. Not just, there's just playing, casually, there's competitive events, there's judging, there's, all the way out to the kind of stuff that we do with content creation. There's
Yeah.
just so many different ways to be involved in this game.
And that's one thing that just excites me about the game is that it is only a year old. And
Hmm.
to see that there are so many people passionate enough about the game that we can have 2,000 competitor events. And that doesn't even include the side events that are firing off
Yep.
on those main event days. So the attendees who are also playing, and that hours long lines at D23 and at Gen Con and things like that.
Crazy.
Not even before you even know if what you're lining up for. Like D23, for all
Yeah.
intents and purposes, at that point was to just buy product and the hope of cards, because they'd done it prior, but no one knew what if you were guaranteed or anything. I think at that point we had known maybe the Golden Mickey pen was around because Gen Con had happened first, but
Right.
it was just like everyone is so passionate about the game that they want. And I think it's almost clear too that it's not just resellers. That's always a scare
Hmm.
in a fear in Disney, is that, well, maybe these long lines are inflated because it's the resellers. Maybe these crowds are inflated because they're just Disney fans. And if that is happening, I think it is, because you can see what happens with the play mats and things like that. But at the same time, you don't get as many challenges as we had in the first year sell out in seconds without there
Crazy.
being a passionate player base ready for there to be the competitiveness. And then I'm super excited to find out what Quest is. I want to know, like,
Yeah.
give me another way to interact with this game I love, where I don't have to care about did I win or lose.
Right.
Like,
Right.
I want to play my puppies decks. I think we counted up. I'm up to 54 puppies,
Oh, all
Dalmatian
right.
puppies. I've got the heart of the stack. This is not, but
Yeah, there you
it's
go.
the build out of, I've got four of each of the non 99 or Dalmatian puppies, and then I will have 99 of the Dalmatian puppies.
Yeah.
And that's my Dalmatian deck. Uh, I just
Nice.
need a few good removal choices in there or draw. But
I love the people that have thrown together, puppies decks and they'll have like two other cards or something. It's like just two other. I mean, I'm sure it seems random, but when you look at them, it makes a little more sense, like
yeah,
removal or something like that. But
I
but
had
yeah,
I
it's
had a deck
crazy.
during that I had a deck during that set called Puppies on Fire. And it
Hmm.
was because I was running Dragon's Fire as removal. And so, because
Nice.
I was playing the evasive Pongo and Ruby.
Right.
And so I just found a few just direct removal. And I think I was playing Be Prepared, which has the fire in the background. So I called
Right.
it Puppies on Fire because it was just like, can I
Nice.
sneak in enough Ruby removal to make the puppy deck work? It did not, but
No,
it
no,
was
I
fun
don't.
while it lasted.
I don't know if that's ever going to be a thing, but I mean, it's fun, and that's the other part of it. It doesn't have to be where, you're going and playing these hyper competitive, meta, worldwide meta kind of decks. Some people just like playing fun decks,
And
you
that's me. Like, I had a deck when we went to TCG Con Houston, it was Royalty Resist. And so it's what
okay.
became Steel Song. So this was before people, I mean, people were playing Steel Song back then.
Hmm.
And this was like a flavor of Steel Song. Tiana had just come out, and I was using Tiana and the Duke, and then all royalty. So it was Binja and the Prince and
Okay.
Cinderella. And that way, after turn two, as long I wouldn't quest with the Duke. And so everything is getting one extra strength. And then from three on, everything I'm playing has resist. And then if I get the
Nice.
right thing, Tiana goes down on four, and then I can play all of my songs, but you can't play any of yours.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so it was just this whole thing that, like, at that whole time I was like, I am not playing Steel Song. And then someone picked up my deck recently and was like, this is Steel Song. And I was like,
It
but
basically, yeah.
but I'm not playing the songs. Like, I literally, like,
Right,
there's not
right.
flute in here to get the lore off of songs. I was like, I'm just kind of making a fun deck that is slightly
Yeah.
annoying, because now you're constantly having to be aware of the board state. Do I have
Hmm.
cards? Is Tiana exerted? Is the Duke on the board? Do they have resist? Um, and so it was one of those where I was just like, I like to do that. And then I'm working on a lockout deck right now. That's an amber steel as well. And so I
Okay.
kind of want people to think that I'm playing Steel Song, but really it's just making it to where you can't do anything you want to do. So it's the Pete Tiana combo.
Okay.
Uh,
Okay.
and then using Kita to the key to shift to stop challenge. Well, to remove strength from any challenges,
Right. Yeah.
and coda to stop you from lore draining.
Yep.
And so I don't
Coda's a
think
fun
we
little
have a
card.
yeah, unfortunately we don't have enough lockout cards yet, but I think we're
Yeah.
getting close to there being a lockout deck that'll be all fun for me, no fun for you.
Well, I look forward to that day. It sounds like you're on the right path, at least.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
Well, I do want to spend some time talking about content creation stuff.
oh yeah.
Since, you've been doing the TikTok stuff, y'all have been doing the live streaming on Twitch. Can you kind of tell me a little bit about kind of what the idea is behind the creation that y'all do?
So it's it's kind of evolved over time. When Sprinkle of so I first launched as Ellie and Marie. That I had been streaming on
Mhm.
that for a while. I'd been doing video game streaming and Lego streaming, and I was like, you know what? I seem to get good numbers when I stream Arena, so let's go ahead and stream some Pixelborn. And I transitioned from Pixelborn to in-person play so that Waylon could start getting involved. And the
Mhm.
more Waylon got involved, I was like, you know what? I don't feel right just having my name on this. Let's make it us. And so that's when Sprinkle of Ink was born.
Okay.
And from there, so right now we do weekly shows where we play our weekly decks and we talk about the meta and the kind of what happened in the week in Lorcana.
Mhm.
And life kind of got the best of us. And so we went from 2 times a week down to one. I think
Yeah.
we're going to end up getting back to 2 times a week eventually, because I want to get back to, we used to do deck chats on Sundays. So we'd break down our decks and be like full on, or one of our buddies would do that. And
Nice.
then, or we would do multiplayer. So we would have a friend come over, and so instead of Waylon playing, they would play, or instead of me playing, someone from our community would play. And
Mhm.
so I want to get back into that kind of, our stream should feel like you're just sitting with your friends playing Lorcana.
Yeah.
And the fact that one of the people at the table is a competitive player and one is skilled in the game, but not as super competitive about the game.
Mhm.
Just showing that you can interact with it that way. And we like to play the other products too. So we did do a stream with Ursula's Quest, or I'm
Mhm.
like, what was that called?
The Illumineer's Quest, the
Yeah,
Deep Trouble.
Lumineer's Quest.
Uh-huh.
And then I think we do have a gateway. So we bought gateway for my niece to give to her for her birthday,
Oh,
and
nice.
we bought a second one just to kind of see what it was. And I wanted to. I'm the aunt that doesn't like giving a gift that I don't know the rules to, so I don't know Gateway's specific rules. So I was like, oh, I'll just
Okay.
buy myself one and then I'll figure it out. Uh, so we'll probably going to crack that on screech on stream just to be like, hey, this is what it is. But then
Nice.
TikTok is where we're starting to drop kind of micro episodes. So right now they're mostly Waylon. I'm putting mine together. So he's
Mhm.
handling the competitive side, just thoughts on decks, things to consider when you're going to events, things to remember. So like when you're playing the bounce package, don't forget to do something with your bounce target before you play that mem. Um, Things to consider when you deck build, because I know a lot of people are new to that, to TCGs, and so they don't
Oh, yeah.
understand those things when we talk about like the curve. Like, what does the curve mean? What is ramping? You guys all keep talking about tempo and control and aggro, and so kind of breaking
Right.
down what those things mean in these little bite-sized things.
That's
Uh,
awesome.
and then we've got some stuff on the pipeline. I've been working on a website for a while now that I want to be a resource that's more of the how to play Lorcana and how to play a style of deck
Mhm.
that's written out. So if you've got 5 minutes on your lunch break, instead of pulling up a YouTube video, you can go to the website and be like, okay, I want to learn some skills for aggro. What is aggro? Because even inside of different, like people coming from different TCGs, like Waylon didn't really understand the concept of aggro because that wasn't really a thing in Yu-Gi-Oh when he was playing it.
Mhm.
And so I was like, it's you ignore the other side of the board and you turn your characters to the side and get
Go
lore as
fast.
fast as you can.
Yep. Yep.
And so I laughed because he tried to build me an aggro. I just wasn't really feeling great, but I wanted to go to, or mentally wasn't feeling great, but I wanted to go to
Mhm.
League and I wanted a set 5 deck. And I was like, well, why don't you just throw me together a set 5 aggro? And I thought he would go like net tech and like find a deck list that was aggro and make that, but he decided to homebrew and wasn't great, but it's okay. He's learning what aggro is.
Yeah.
It was
Yeah.
very much and then I took it apart and it became a pretty decent deck, which has been my comfort deck for this set. I've
Nice.
gotten, I think I got first place in League this set, and then tied for first, and then I got like 7th place in a local competitive tournament with it. So I'm still one of those
Okay.
aggro players that can sneak their way into those top cuts still. Uh,
Nice.
but yeah, so we're trying to get a little bit of everything out there right now, and then
Hmm.
eventually, with Vegas coming up with my first time judging a major event, I'm going to start putting out a how to learn how to judge Lorcana. So there is not
Nice.
an official judge program yet. And
Hmm.
so there's no way for someone to like test to show they know Lorcana, but there's a ton of resources and they're all free and they're all open. And for the most part, they're all super welcoming. But I think a lot of people don't know those resources exist. So
Yep.
the comprehensive rules, the tournament guidelines, the correction guidelines, even the fact that you can ask other players in the official Lorcana Discord
Hmm.
and almost instantly get an answer.
Oh yeah.
Um, and
Or start a
so,
controversy one way or the
yes, or
other.
start a controversy. We still need to know if we can sing up something that we played for free.
Oh my gosh. I think I
Or
saw that
must
one the other day.
must you declare that Pete
Yeah.
prevents
Yeah.
actions? Yeah, that was, I didn't expect that one to be a controversy. I was like,
I
guys, I
didn't
played the
either.
card, but I guess that's an angle that you do have to declare a trigger coming out of the bag
I
or an action
guess.
coming out of the bag. But
I mean, I get it.
uh
It's kind of something different than the usual, stuff that would impact the other player, sort of. But yeah, they got
yeah.
blown way out of proportion.
Or my thing with the song one is we've been focusing so much on Naveen and oh, if I
Mhm.
say I'm going to play it for free, can I then change my mind and sing it with Ursula? And I'm like, well, at that point, you didn't play it for free. You just sang it with Ursula. It's from your hand. It doesn't
Right,
really
right.
matter. And I was like, we didn't have this conversation with Mulan, and she's been in the game since set 2.
Hmm.
And she lets you play for free, but it's from the top of the deck. So does that mean I can pull it out of the deck by saying I'm playing it for free and then sing it? And I was like, now we're just getting into wildness that I don't think is ever going to happen. But
Yeah, yeah. Well, and
because
it's
nobody
amazing.
plays that Mulan card, so it's never going to
No,
happen.
no, no. But the people that, they put out these situations that, like you're saying, I mean, there is a minuscule chance that that would ever actually come up in a game.
Yeah,
And
like I
then
like,
some of it
I
is like
like,
common sense. It's like, well,
yeah,
yeah, okay, I know what Pete does,
yeah.
I understand.
My favorite are the types of ones where a hypothetical will come like so many for like so, my friends love to do it. They'll be like, so if you're judging and somebody sneezes and accidentally hits the table and all the cards go
Oh my
everywhere, what do
gosh.
you do? And I'm like, I will cross that bridge when I get there.
I mean, seriously. It's like, what if they turn the AC on full blast oh my gosh,
Yeah.
no, just don't worry about it.
Or I did have a rule one that was interesting the first time I judged where someone kept popping their ink out of anxiety, like they just kept
What do you mean?
flipping the corner of one of their ink cards and it was clearly out of
Oh,
anxiety, but we did end up
right.
having to tell them like, can you get any other fidget, like
Yeah.
because their opponent thought that they were looking at what was in the ink, and at that point it didn't
Uh,
really matter. Mufasa had not hit the blue Mufasa had not hit our ether yet,
mm-hmm.
so you
Right.
couldn't get ink back at that point. But it was just one of those things where we had to be like, hey, any card that you're not supposed to know, because they were also doing it with the top card of their deck too. They were just kind of flipping it, not really looking,
Oh, yeah.
but their opponent was worried that they were flicking it just enough to see what it was. And
Mm-hmm.
so we were like, can we get you a fidget? Can we do anything?
Yeah.
We get that you're anxious, but we gotta figure out how to make sure you don't get in trouble today so that you can have a
Yeah.
good day and your opponents aren't on edge. Uh, so that was an interesting one to be a part of.
Well, and I would think that if they're pulling on the edge of their card after a while, it would start like fraying or marking it or something
Yeah.
somehow. And I mean, if it's competitive, you can't re-sleeve in the middle of a match, you know? So
Yeah.
you
And
know,
it was like it was a teenager, like probably 18, 19. It was their first
yeah,
TCG. And so we were like, we don't want to discourage them from playing, but also
right,
that's just those whole like you can't mess with stuff that's out on the playing
right.
field, especially stuff that you shouldn't know what it is. So
Yep, yep. Yeah, that's tough. I mean, it's one thing to be like in a judge position where, you have to know all the ins and outs of the rules and, corrections and all that kind of stuff. But then there's the whole other side, the people side of it, right? You
yeah.
can't just walk up and say, "Oh, well, this is how it is," and then walk away from the table. It's like sometimes you have to hear the story. Sometimes you have to, kind of work with them a little bit and actually help them understand why it's a problem that happened or that they're flicking the edge of their cards constantly or because I mean it seems pretty innocuous, you're just kind of nervous and so you're playing with something, but to fully understand what that means in the context of the game is a whole different story.
Yeah, and I think that's one part of the judge program or judging that people don't consider, and is actually what I love is the people aspect of it.
Hmm.
So I tell people that I am probably the biggest extroverted introvert, that when I am doing something for the service of others, I can be on and I can be
Hmm.
peppy and just perfect. Years of working at Starbucks, years at working at Disney, uh, doing our streams. The streams, I let it down a little bit more, but I can turn it on. I can just be that person that's just like, let's get you this, let's do this. What can I do for you? How can I help you? I understand this is frustrating, but this is how things are going to go. And like, just get through that. And then as soon as the event's over, I'm going to turn it off and I'm completely different.
Yep.
I need to go lock myself in a room and play
Yeah.
Switch for
Yeah.
several
Yeah.
hours or read a book or something. And so it's just one of those things that I get so fulfilled by having that one-to-one interaction where I can leave someone feeling good about what just happened.
Hmm.
And so for Lorcana, it's it was hard as a competitor because your options are you either you leave the table 1-1, and for me that felt great, but for like hyper competitive players it doesn't feel awesome.
Right.
You leave the table 2-0, and that feels great for you but not great for the person across from the table, or you leave 0-2 and it's like you don't feel great but they feel wonderful.
Hmm.
uh and so with judging, there is this ability that even if you're giving a judgment that the player doesn't necessarily like, you can do everything in your power to make sure it's delivered in a way that nobody leaves the table mad about it.
Yep.
Uh,
Yep.
if you're mad about it, you're mad about the rules of the game, and I can't fix that.
Right.
But I can at least hear you out and hear your side of why like why you think it should be one way or the other. Um, and part of being a judge or is just making sure that the event is a good space for everyone. And that's
Hmm.
kind of the why judges are required, because you wouldn't want players having to fight between themselves to fix
Right.
things. And
Right.
so
Yeah.
I try to encourage everyone, even if it's the most minor thing, don't feel bad calling a judge, because
Hmm.
players should never feel like they have to decide it between themselves. So if there's a minor disagreement on lore total or how many, if you inked or not, don't don't lose out time. The time is so important. Just go ahead and call a judge, and let us handle it. It's what we're there for. And we're going to do
Yep.
it with a smile. And we're going to do it in the most fair and impartial way that we can based on the rules. And that way, nobody can say later that they felt like, oh, I was 100% sure you inked, but, I rolled over and let you have it. Well, if you call a judge, you're not the one rolling over and letting them have it. uh,
Right. Right.
so,
Well, and the fact that there's multiple judges. It's not like you
yeah.
just have one judge wandering around. It's like, okay, I disagree with what this judge is ruling. Can we get another one, to come over and give another ruling? Or you have, the head judge that comes over and
Yeah,
actually, makes that final kind of decision. It takes a lot of the personal aspect out of it, right? It's not like you're
exactly.
saying, "Oh, well, I like this person more, so I'm going to rule in their favor." It's like 99% of these people you probably don't even know, or like you said, we'll never see again.
Yeah. Well, Waylon likes to tell people that I'm probably the best for judge because there was an event where if I had not pulled up the document to show someone the way it should go, he
Mhm.
would have gotten a full win and he would have gotten first place that night. And it would have been over $100. I can't remember exactly how much, but it would have been over $100 in store credit. And basically, what happened was they went to time and rounds. He was at 18 at the end of round five,
Mhm.
and his opponent was at like 16. So no one had won. And they
Right.
decided, and about half of the shop decided, whoever has the most lore wins. And I said, I don't think that's how it
No.
works.
Yeah, I
And
don't think
someone
so.
else said, no, I think it is. And I said, well, you know what? The tournament documents are up. Why don't we just look at it? And so
Mhm.
I went and looked at the tournament documents and read word for word if it's a best of three, or at that point, or like not a top cut, if it's
Mhm.
just a Swiss match and there is no winner at the end of two, it's a no-win game. So
Yeah.
they ended up having to
Yeah.
take a draw. They
Okay.
took a
That's what I
1-1-0.
thought. I was like,
Yeah.
that doesn't sound right. Yeah.
They took a, I think there was a brief moment where in casual play, if there needed to be a winner and there was a time limit on Swiss or on single elimination,
Mhm.
then you could use that. That was it. I think that's a set championship specific ruling if your shop is in top cut and does not have the ability to extend its time. And so you can only allow players to play 55 minutes plus 5 rounds.
Mhm.
Someone has to win at that point,
Right.
but it's not the standard by any means. That's a very, very rare. And this was a shop that we could stay open as long as we needed to. And so I was like, and so everyone was like, well, how are we going to rule it? And I was like, the document says what the document says. And someone's like,
Yep.
literally, if you had just not said anything, everyone agreed. But you're like, at that point, it was just unofficial judge of the area. But they're like, you were the unofficial judge. And we're like, everyone's like, and you were just like, let's read the document. And I was
Yep.
like, that's what a judge does. It to me, it doesn't matter if it's my
Yeah.
husband across the in the ruling involved or my best friend or a complete random stranger. Part of the job is being fair and impartial.
Mhm. Yep,
And
definitely.
I think he ended up getting second place instead of first place. So
Ah.
and we got like $50 instead of
It's
100. But
close.
yeah,
I mean, yeah.
yeah. So
Well, I do want to touch a little bit on some of the latest developments with Azurite Sea.
oh
I'm
yeah.
curious, have you been brewing up any spicy decks or anything interesting with it?
I haven't seen enough cards to brew anything up yet.
Okay.
Uh
Okay.
I've got some ideas. I might have to steal Sapphire from Waylon, mostly because I am a massive Oswald fan. I'm
Right.
like, is he
Okay.
actually near me? No, he's not. I have a real life Oswald. Our dog is a long haired dachshund named Oswald.
Nice.
Uh,
Oh.
and so seeing that card and then getting the D23 set was just
Hmm.
such a big deal for me. I can't wait to have it just displayed. I'm trying to figure out the best way to do it because I don't want to take the set apart, but
Right.
also I don't want it to get destroyed since it's cardboard. Um, but I've I've loved Oswald for so long. My grandpa like grew up with Oswald back in the original animation. And
Okay.
so he had an Oswald toy or ornament or something when I was growing up. So like we knew who Oswald the Lucky Rabbit was, but it was
Hmm.
just this thing that like my grandpa had. And then so when Epic Mickey came back around, I was like, oh my God, like all of this information. It's like it's Oswald and Orangebird because I also remember my grandparents had an Orangebird sipper we all drank out of when we were little. And it was
Okay.
because they went to Disney World the year Epcot opened. And back then you
Oh,
could
wow.
stop at this little like orange welcome center in Florida and they were selling the little orange bird sippers and he was at the terrace in Magic Kingdom and that whole
Hmm.
thing. And so like we grew up with that, but he was not in the parks at the point when we got to be when we were born in like New Disney. And I only saw Disney through Disney Channel. We didn't go to the parks till I was an adult.
Mm-hmm.
And but we grew up with this character. And so when it got re-reduced, I was like, what? And so it was similar with Oswald, where like when Epic Mickey happened and all of that, I was like, oh wow, this is wild. Like I've grown up with that character, but it was just like, oh, that's something from grandpa's childhood.
Right, right.
uh
It's kind of that weird mental shift of,
yeah.
oh, okay.
And so to like
Yeah.
find out all of his lore and then
Right.
I just for whatever reason he became this character that I just attached to. And so to see him in Lorcana, and I didn't think we were going to get him. I really didn't. It
Yeah.
was just one of those seeing Steamboat Willie and then seeing like the progression. I was like, there's just, maybe they don't have it. Maybe because they like did Epic Mickey, they have some partnership with the people they did that with who, and maybe they own the card rights to him. Like I started thinking about all those things because I think about like the
Hmm.
craziness that is Marvel like movie
Oh my
ownership.
goodness.
I
Yep.
was like, we could be dealing with that and I'm never going to see him. And so when they released the card, I like freaked out. And then he happens to be a really good card.
Yeah, yeah, he is pretty good. It's not just like, this little token, oh, we'll just throw him in there. It's like somebody actually thought, okay, let's make him pretty decent. I mean, it's a
Yeah.
big kind of key piece of, of the history of everything.
Yeah. My other favorite character cards that have ended up in the game have not been great cards. So Coda
Hmm.
was he was, I love bears. And like he was, when I just a Disney character I always connected to. And so uh when I saw him, I was like, great. And I was like, he's a good card. And then I started messing and I was like, he's not. And Pua
He's
was the same thing. Like
I mean, they're kind of useful. They're
yeah,
not like amazing meta defining cards, but yeah.
yeah. And Pua was the other one where
Hmm.
I showed pigs in high school with FFA. And
Hmm.
so Pua was another Disney character. It was just like, oh, he just slides right in there perfectly to that part of my life. And so when I saw him, I was like, oh, this is great. And again, I was like, oh, you get to shuffle him back in. And forever, my friends were like, are you going to keep trying to make these cards work? And I was like, yes, I am. And
Everybody
so,
always has those certain cards. They're
yeah,
like, I love these cards. I want them to work so
um,
bad.
I'll never forget set 5 at the very beginning when we get all the cards and everyone's like cutting up their fake versions to like deck test and stuff.
Hmm.
I instantly was like Amber Amethyst Hyper Aggro. It's gonna happen. And so I slide Pua and Coda into it. And my friend texts me and goes, stop trying to make them work. He was like, there are better cards for those slots, And I was like,
Yeah,
but they're good enough. They're
good
good
enough.
enough.
Yeah. Well, and I mean, hey, honestly, you never know. There's some of these people that come out of the DLCs and these major competitive events that they're playing like off the wall random stuff. And it's
That's
stuff that people are like, what?
if I ever top a challenge, that's gonna be what's gonna happen. I'm just gonna come with a deck that's just like, or as Waylon loves to say, if it's a deck that I haven't actually studied. So it didn't work with the Ruby Amethyst because I knew that deck. And so
Hmm.
playing a deck that I changed with no practice, I knew the through lines and stuff. But there's been so many times that a deck I haven't put a lot of time into, I'll pick up, especially if it's one of Waylon's decks or a more complicated deck. I'll just be like, okay, these are the cards I got. I'm not going to mulligan as long as I've got enough ink. And then I'll just play. And he's like, your ability to pick up a deck and muddle your way through it to a win. I'm like, well, it happens. I was like, I think it's because I don't get to overthink when I
Right.
have to
Yeah.
decide a through line, pick it, and make it through it. When I know all the through lines, I can start to overthink, which is
Mhm.
happening to me right now in our local meta. We have two red Fossa players, which I played that. When I came back to the competitive side of the game, I was playing that.
Mhm.
And now that I know all those through lines, when I play against a red Fossa player, I'm like, but if I do this, you could do that. So do and I like start to overthink, and then
Yep.
it just
Yep.
becomes a little bit too much. And so it's just easier if I'm just like, I'm playing Lorcana and I don't really want to think too much. I'm gonna play this because it seems like the right thing to play.
Hey, there's something to be said for intuition, you know? I
Yeah.
mean, you get to a point where you know the game, you kind of know the cards, you know how things can potentially work together, and it's like that's enough, to be
Yep.
able to just take a deck and say, okay, I see what I have in my hand. Let's make this work.
And that's one of my favorite ways to play now. And so that's
Yeah.
kind of what we started doing on the stream is I just like we'll make a deck the day or two before. That is
Mhm.
one of the competitive decks. We'll take a list off of either Knives, like just a mass amount of data, or Dreamborn,
Mhm.
or we'll look at Mushi Report and things like that. And we'll just pick one of them. We'll put it together really quickly. I'll have done no research, watched no YouTube videos about it or anything, and just be like, let's see if I can beat Waylon's deck tonight.
That's awesome though. I mean that's and it's having fun with it.
Yeah.
I mean, I understand the people that are hyper competitive and they really want to get in there, they really want to win and everything, but in the end, it's a game. You're supposed to have fun playing it. And so,
Yeah.
it's great to hear things like that there's people that, and I think I forget oh, it was Rebecca on Twitter the other day. She was like, "Show me your best theme decks." Just to kind of get something different. It's not like what's the hyper competitive meta decks. Let's not worry about those. Let's worry about something fun. Think about movie themes or what's your favorite line to play and how did you work around it? All sorts of stuff.
Yeah. Or I had to miss it, unfortunately, but Love to Lore did a competition day where we did double feature match. And
Mm-hmm.
so there's the aforementioned Oswald.
Oh, there
Uh,
he is.
but in double feature, the rules we played by was all of Lorcana's rules stay, but
Hmm.
you can only use cards from two franchises. And so we
Okay.
used Mushu Report to make sure everyone agreed on what a franchise was.
Right.
Because I was originally going to play, but schedule didn't allow. And I was kind of the person that was like, but what if I say Kingdom Hearts is my franchise, even though it's not in the game? Does that open any
Yeah.
game that is any card of a character that has been in Kingdom Hearts? And
Right,
I
right.
was like, because then I pretty much get everything. Or I just forgot what the name of it was. It was the Mickey show where they owned a nightclub.
Oh, House of Mouse?
Yes, House of Mouse. I was like, am I
Yeah.
allowed to say House of Mouse as a franchise? And they were like, what do you mean? And I was like, well, House of Mouse pretty much had anyone and everyone in the
Hmm.
90s, 2000s that was Disney. And so I could use The Little Mermaid and The Lion King
Right.
and The Rescuers. And I was like, I will find an episode of House of Mouse where they were on it so I can use the cards I want to use. I was like, they were like, this is why we have to use a list. The people like
Yes.
you.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
I was like, I just am a Disney fan, so knew about House of Mouse and knew that the idea was that every character
Try
was,
to work the system there a little bit. Yeah.
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 Yeah, it's like, I'm sorry you didn't know about House of Mouse as an option.
The
But
encyclopedic knowledge of Disney lore and,
yeah.
TV and movies and all that. Yep.
Or we played one on stream that was a single franchise. So the rules were it could
Oh.
only come from one movie.
Uh-huh.
And then you were allowed to use anything, or no, we actually did just do one movie. Um, I have a tiny cat climbing me right now, is what's going on. But So you could use the flavor text for ours. So in Love to Lures, it couldn't use like the flavor text didn't count for if it was in a franchise or not. But in ours it did.
Okay.
So I chose the Little Mermaid and played an Emerald Amethyst. And that was important because Emerald has the hidden ink caster. And Flounder is who
Right.
originally finds it. And if you read
Oh yeah.
the
That's right.
sorry, it's fighting on me on top of me. Uh the kitten has decided the dog is hers and is trying to pull him off my lap. Um,
Okay.
but the flounder is in the hidden inkcaster flavor text. And so I was like, I
Hmm.
get to use it because he's in that.
Okay.
And
All
that
right.
was an interesting situation because on paper, the Ursula deck in a themed situation looks so powerful.
Hmm.
You have the Flotsam Jetsams that work together. You have the Cursed Merfolk. You have all of Ursula and then her big shift and Ursula's Lair and just all of these fantastic cards that we see play in some of the top meta decks. And so the problem was Waylon chose Hercules, but he went for the Titans and Hades.
Okay.
And on paper, your brain goes, none of this works. But what happened was there's these combos that are necessary where you need Titans and Hades out to be able to do them.
Hmm.
And they don't fire off in competitive play because you usually are playing against someone who has steel removal or has ruby removal or has the sapphire ramp to really get going or has that aggro start. And so you can't get to it. But in this theme night, my deck that on paper looked like it should have just annihilated Wayland's, he was able to stop me from ever getting up to speed. And
All
so I was
right.
constantly having to answer these Titans. And then I'm sitting there going, wait, you did this, so you get to ready him and you get to do it again and then ready
Hmm.
and do this and that. And I was like, this is too much. And so it was just funny because it was just I was so super confident and was like, I've chose the best franchise. I chose the
Yeah.
best deck you could make in the franchise world. And I think it is that idea that if you bring what is the meta to those themed nights, it doesn't work. And it
Right.
proves how you can have so much fun with the game and win a game as long as everyone's playing by the same rules. And so
Yep.
there are ways to engage that make it super fun. And that's what that night was about, was just having fun. Or on Valentine's Day, we did a couples. So Waylon did an anti-Valentine's Day deck where he did all villains. So it was the
Okay.
Queen of Hearts and things like that. And then I did Mickey and Minnie and Jasmine and Aladdin.
Okay.
And so I could use any Mickey Minnie card and then any Agrabah or Aladdin card. And
Hmm.
so it was a fun that one. I ended up doing it because Aladdin's and Jasmine's just because I was like, what was I playing? Guess it was a Ruby Sapphire if it was Jasmine.
Hmm.
Uh, but again, two color combos that you would never see in the meta.
Yeah.
Or
Yeah.
well, you at that point you didn't see them in the meta. Now you
Well,
do.
yeah.
Uh, but it's just and the choices of cards they would never have worked. But that night they worked and I got the win and it was just a lot of fun to
Nice.
think, okay, if I can only play with like couples or I have to choose a theme for Valentine's Day, and I have to stay in that theme, how
Mhm.
do I make a deck that works?
Yep. It's interesting when you kind of impose those other restrictions around it, right? It's not, okay, two ink colors and then it's open, right?
Yeah.
To say it has to be a theme, it has to kind of match a, special event that we're doing. Or, there's some that are like they require you to only use commons and uncommons.
Yeah.
Just little additions like that can really bring out a lot of extra creativity too, in just general deck building. It's really cool to see.
Yeah, and it's probably my favorite way to interact with the game right now because it doesn't require you knowing new rules.
Right.
And so that's one reason I struggle with kind of the fan created versions of the game because those require completely like you have to basically relearn the game because you're not
Hmm.
at that point you're not playing Lorcana. You're playing
Right.
with the Lorcana cards, but you're playing a different game. On theme nights, it's pretty easy to tell people, hey, we're going to have a theme night next week. Build a deck that only has characters from 2 movies in it.
Hmm.
Build a deck that you can argue fits the theme of friendship. Uh,
There you go. Yeah.
like whatever, I've seen different ones, or the princess party type decks,
Right. Yeah.
where we're having a princess party. Build a deck that you think is appropriate for an afternoon tea,
Hmm.
and just letting the community kind of police itself to a point. Like,
Yeah.
you clearly are not going to play be prepared if we're having a princess afternoon tea. uh, but you could play a villain deck and play the queens and
Yeah.
things like that that fits in the theme. Or I know Enchanted Kim is running a villains Halloween party again.
Yes.
Yeah,
I think it's Halloween. I know
yeah,
it's coming up here pretty soon. So
yeah. So like the idea of having a villains night is kind of fun.
yeah. Yeah.
And so it's just a way that you don't have to relearn a new way to play the game. You just get creative in how we play the game.
Hmm. And it takes a lot of the pressure off too, right? You
Yeah.
know, you're not trying to make these really super competitive decks. It's like, I just want to have fun with it, you know?
Yeah.
And if it turns out to be an awesome deck, great, you know. But yeah.
Yeah.
Well, hey, thank you so much for sitting down with me. I've really enjoyed our chat and really enjoyed just getting to talk to you and you know, I wish you all the best of luck in Vegas. You know, I know it's kind of a high pressure environment, so I don't envy you to have to deal with some of that stuff, but you know, I think they've got enough DLCs under their belts that hopefully, you know, things will be running pretty smoothly. So I do want to end with the same 3 questions that I ask everybody here. So first off, favorite ink and card right now.
My favorite ink has been amber. It's
Nice.
pretty consistently been amber, but my favorite card is actually not the answer most people think it's going to be. As much as I love the Daisy, my favorite card is Gathering Knowledge.
That's a good one. I've been
It's
enjoying that in a deck lately.
Yeah, it's been I think it is the make or break on that hyper aggro deck. So many
Hmm.
people think it's the goat, and I'm like, nope. Gathering Knowledge changed the game, because I can't tell you how many times I've been be prepared at 18,
Yep. Yep. You
and
just
a goat
toss it
doesn't win
down.
you. Yep, a goat doesn't win you at 18, but a Gathering Knowledge does.
Yes. Yes, it does.
And I played it this week and had about the worst character draws I could get, but I top decked 3 Gathering Knowledges. So I never got behind in lore because I was able to
Nice.
just play the Gathering Knowledge, play the Gathering Knowledge, play the Gathering
Yeah.
Knowledge. So yeah, that's my card right now.
Awesome. Yeah, it's a nice little boost. Okay, so favorite Disney movie and why?
This one is hard because it's always constantly changing. I go through phases,
Mhm.
but I think I'm going to go with my one that's not officially in Lorcana yet, and parts of it are, but I hope it is soon. And it's an odd one for an adult to say, but I love Pooh's Heffalump movie, where we get
Okay.
introduced into Lumpy. Just
Okay.
because I think it's a fun little movie. And it's one of those, like I said, I have these like strong connections to certain characters, and for some reason that little heffalump really just stole my heart. He's so cute. I have a plush lumpy, and
No.
he stays in the closet because the dog unfortunately thought it
Yes.
was his at one point. uh but yeah,
I
but if I went with a more like mainstream, it's the Lion King. I've The Lion King has been my favorite since it came out. I got the VHS when I was a small child for my birthday. And I remember being so excited when I opened it. I was like, when I go to college, this is coming with me. Because at that age, I thought college was so far away and such a big
right.
bill.
Right.
Uh, and so I had my VHS and I was like, I have a copy of it now because I made a deck box out of it, but
Oh,
I don't
nice.
have a VHS player.
Right.
But yeah,
Yeah. I don't know many
uh,
people that do, honestly.
yeah. But no, Lion King is the one that's been on the top of the list for the longest and consistently. Uh, just I think a lot of people our age, that was just our movie. Uh,
Hmm.
and we learned a lot through the Lion King.
Yeah. Yeah.
And
Well,
then
I
I
mean,
also love Lion King 1.5. So it just goes into
oh
each
yeah,
one.
it's
Yeah.
for a sequel. It's pretty good.
Yeah.
Yeah, I guess a sequel. Yeah.
And I'm also a
Um,
big theater nerd. So the fact it's Hamlet and Rosencrantz and Guildenstern are dead. And Rosencrantz and Guildenstern are dead is my favorite play. So it kind of just like goes in together that children's movies ended up actually being my favorite when I uh experienced their source material.
mhm.
So yeah.
Nice. All right. And final question. Where can people find y'all and your content?
So you can find us on all social media. It's sprinkle underscore of underscore ink. And that's going to be across everything. And so Instagram, Twitter, Twitch is just sprinkle of ink. So it's at sprinkle of ink.
Mhm.
And then TikTok. And we are live Wednesdays, usually around 8 Central Time, unless life gets a hold of us and we got to change the time. But then you also never know when we'll go live. Sometimes we just go live because we want to play Lorcana and share it with friends.
Hey, nothing wrong with that.
Yeah.
All right. Well, cool. Well, thank you again so much. I've really enjoyed it, and I appreciate you taking the time to sit down and talk with me. And we'll see you around the community.
Thank you.
Thanks for joining us on today's episode. If you liked what you heard, make sure to subscribe and rate or like us on your platform of choice. If you'd like to reach out to the show, you can email us at lorcanachats@gmail.com. You can also find us on Twitter or X at LorcanaChats, the podcast at podcast.lorcanachats.com, or just lorcanachats.com. We love feedback on the show, and let us know if there's anyone you'd like to hear from in the Lorcana community. See you next time.